Hi, rail fans and model railroaders. Welcome to episode 7 of our build series, The Dreaded Swing Bridge. So today, I want to go over how I built this swing bridge, what I needed it to do, and how it accomplished these requirements. So why don't you follow along with me and we'll finish up this important phase of our layout. So let's talk about the requirements for this swing bridge. Number one, I need it to be wide enough to allow ease of access to inside the track area. So on this one, we accomplish that by making sure the back is 29 inches at the back, and up front, we need to make sure we're clearing our peninsula, and here we have 39 inches. So when we swing this open, and here we have about 2-inch clearance, should be about right. The other requirements is we wanted to make sure that this would stay nice and square. So to accomplish this, I created the back end using 1x12s, 1x4s, and 1x6s, and 1x10s. So that this whole back is one solid piece of a 1x12, and then I've got a 1x6s on either side, and that creates my flat surface. And I've got the 1x10s on the sides here that help create a good box, and it keeps a very light weight towards the back, and by using 1x4s extending out across the span, it keeps the weight off the end, the free end, away from the hinges. The other thing we needed is we needed to make sure that we had a good flat surface here, that when we closed it up against where our micro switches are, that we'd have good contact and actuate those switches. So we have that by here. Next, we need to make sure that our bridge is going to be level and it's going to be square. So we're level across, squared up on the ends. With the build that we did here, it should stay nice and level and square. The next criteria is we needed a good flat surface here so that we'd make sure that we touch our micro switches and actuate them when we close the gate. The next part of the project is we need to start working on building our upper deck across the bridge and get our decking down on top for the lower one of the bridge. So this will be a piece of plywood, 1/8 or 1/4-inch plywood that we're using. And up here, so we can get it good and stable, we're going to use a 1x8 piece of lumber. So as we're building this upper deck out, we're going to use a 1x8. So to do this, we need to run the 1x8 further out to here. If we do this, that'll stabilize the whole thing. It'll make sure that we're nice and steady and solid, and we can maintain level if start to change on us. But to do that, we need to pull up this plywood. We need to cut it off at this riser here because we're going to put a 1x8 in, and we're going to have one bay be level with our plywood over here, so we'll have to put a drop line riser here and cut down these risers as well. And by having a solid piece all the way to here with a riser, then we can use the hinge point and be able to get our hinge point and cut our curve into it at that spot, so it'll swing open and close just fine. So once you all follow along, and I'll start getting this work done. First, we need to move the decking after first marking it for our cuts. Once cut, we can reinstall the deck. And go to work removing the risers. Then after marking and cutting the 1x8, I remove the rest of the decking, and then I'm going to use a 2x4 to bridge the space and ensure that the surfaces of the 1x8 and the plywood match up. So here I'm going to make it easy on myself by placing the risers in position and marking the cuts in place instead of trying to measure and transcribe the measurements to the risers. This method is pretty accurate and should result in minimum shivving of the plywood base. After marking and cutting, it's on to cutting down to size and reinstalling the risers. With the baseboard risers done, now on to work with the swing bridge itself. So I made a jig of 1x4 scraps to create the needed position for the risers on the hinge end. And here I'm trying to ensure that I have a good position for the second piece of riser. It needs to exactly match up at the top edge where it meets the 1x8. In the end, I elected to use a piece of plywood as a template to make sure that I got it in the right position. Now, with the 1x8 in place, we can go ahead and position the outboard riser. This riser was a little more tricky because of a tight space for running down screws and adjusting the clamps, but with a little work, we're able to work it out. And finally, we can add this swing bridge decking. Now things are looking a little more finished. So now we can go ahead and Finish positioning the plywood decking down. And position the upper deck 1x8. So here we want to make sure that our 1x8 is in its final position, because now we'll need to make it a mark for the cut for the arc. So we'll temporarily screw it into place. Then we'll use the travel. Based off of the hinge point, we can create the arc that's needed to be able to open and close it without any issues. And finally, here's our beautiful swing bridge footage. Well, there we go, gang. We finished up our swing bridge. We made sure that we had adequate clearance and pass-through space. We also made sure that we had a good fit and we'd actuate the micro switches. And we installed the upper and lower decks, and then we ensured we had a free ease of movement on the whole thing. So it should work pretty good. I'm really hopeful. I think it's a decent enough design. So if you're really enjoying the series and you like the channel, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe. And next week, we're going to move on and start installing our foam board base. So pretty soon we can get on to the track work and running trains. I'm excited and I can't wait to get to that point. So join us next week on another episode of Getting Back on Track with Steve. Have a good week, Dave.